My name is Kennedy, and I own a chain of luxury hotels. 3 years ago, my husband died building our dream, and last week I walked into our flagship hotel in a simple navy blue dress to honor his memory. My own manager slapped me across the face and called me worthless. He had no idea who I was. But what I discovered in the next 10 minutes didn't just cost him his job, it exposed a betrayal so deep, it nearly destroyed everything my husband died creating. Stay with me until the end, because what happened involves family betrayal, stolen money, and a twist that will leave you speechless. This story changed my life, and I need to share it with you. Let's begin. I need to take you back 3 years to understand why that slap meant so much more than physical pain. 3 years ago, I lost the love of my life. My husband wasn't just my partner in marriage. He was my partner in every dream we ever had. We started with nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. We were 2 kids who fell in love in college, working 3 jobs each just to pay rent, eating instant noodles for dinner most nights, but we were happy. We had each other, and we had a dream. My husband wanted to build hotels. Not just any hotels, but places where people felt genuinely welcomed, where luxury didn't mean looking down on others, where anyone who walked through the doors felt like they mattered. He used to say, "Kennedy, when we make it big, promise me you'll never forget what it feels like to be invisible. Promise me you'll always see people." I promised him. I promised him with everything in my heart. We spent 10 years building our first hotel from the ground up. We did everything ourselves, painting walls, cleaning bathrooms, carrying furniture up flights of stairs. My husband worked on the construction site every single day. He was hands-on with everything. That's who he was. He couldn't just sit in an office and delegate. He needed to be there, touching every brick, making sure everything was perfect. Then one Tuesday morning, I got the call that shattered my world. There'd been an accident at the construction site. A beam collapsed. My husband was underneath it. I remember dropping the phone and running. I ran 12 blocks to that site in my work shoes, my lungs burning, my heart exploding in my chest. When I got there, I saw him lying there. And I knew. I just knew. His last words to me in the hospital, as he held my hand with whatever strength he had left, were simple. "Stay humble. Stay kind. Finish our dream, Kennedy. Don't let them change you." 3 hours later, he was gone. I was 31 years old and suddenly alone with an unfinished hotel and a mountain of debt. Everyone told me to sell. Everyone told me to walk away. His family, our friends, even our business partners, they all said I couldn't do it alone. But they didn't understand. That hotel wasn't just a building. It was every sacrifice we'd made, every late night we'd worked, every dream we'd whispered to each other in the dark. I couldn't let it die with him. So I didn't. I finished that hotel, then I built another one, and another. 3 years later, I had 5 luxury hotels across the state. I was successful by every measure that matters in business. I was wealthy. I was respected in the industry. But inside, I was still that broken woman who'd lost everything that mattered. Success felt empty without him. I kept my promise to him, though. I stayed humble. I wore simple clothes. I drove a regular car. I lived in the same apartment we'd shared. And every year on the anniversary of his death, I wore navy blue, his favorite color on me. He used to say I looked like the ocean in navy blue, calm and deep and beautiful. That's what he'd say, and I'd laugh and kiss him and tell him he was ridiculous. God, I'd give anything to hear him say it one more time. Last month, something happened that changed everything. I received an envelope at my office. No return address, just my name handwritten on the front. Inside was a single piece of paper with a typed message. "Your flagship hotel is stealing from you. Check the books, trust no one." That was it. No signature, no explanation, nothing. I'll be honest, my first instinct was to throw it away. I get weird mail sometimes. People who want money, people with complaints, people who think they know how to run my business better than I do. But something about this letter felt different. It felt urgent. It felt real. So I did what any CEO would do. I checked the financial reports for the flagship hotel. Everything looked normal. Revenue was steady, expenses were within range, profit margins were healthy. but the letter had said, "Trust no one," and that stuck with me. If someone was stealing, they'd be smart enough to make the books look clean. I needed to see things myself, not through reports and numbers, but with my own eyes. That's when I made the decision to go undercover. I chose the anniversary of my husband's death, exactly 3 years to the day. I woke up that morning and pulled out my navy blue dress, the simple one I'd worn to dinner with him dozens of times. No jewelry except my wedding ring, no makeup except a little mascara. I looked in the mirror and saw myself the way I used to be. Just Kennedy, not Kennedy the CEO, not Kennedy the wealthy hotel owner. Just me. I took a regular taxi to the flagship hotel. I didn't call ahead. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I wanted to see how my staff treated regular customers, people who walked in off the street looking for a room, people who didn't arrive in limousines or designer suits. I wanted to see if we were honoring my husband's vision, or if we'd become exactly what he never wanted us to be. When I arrived at the entrance, the doorman was standing there scrolling through his phone. I walked right up to the door, and he didn't even look up. He didn't open the door for me. I stood there for a moment waiting, and he just kept scrolling. So I opened it myself and walked into the lobby. The lobby was beautiful. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers everywhere. My husband had designed this space. He'd chosen every detail. Standing there, I could almost feel him next to me, pointing out the architecture, explaining why he'd chosen that particular shade of cream for the walls. The memory hurt so much I had to close my eyes for a second. When I opened them, I saw the front desk. 2 receptionists were standing there, chatting with each other, laughing about something on one of their phones. I walked up and stood there, waiting to be acknowledged. They kept talking. I cleared my throat softly. Nothing. I waited for 5 full minutes, and they completely ignored me. Then a couple walked in behind me. Designer luggage, expensive clothes, the woman wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Immediately, both receptionists sprang into action. Big smiles, enthusiastic greetings, falling over themselves to help. I stepped aside and watched them get checked in with warm towels, complimentary champagne, personal escort to their room. When they left, I approached the desk again. One of the receptionists finally looked at me, and the expression on her face? I'll never forget it. Pure annoyance, like I was interrupting her day just by existing. She sighed and said, "Yes? What do you need?" I smiled politely and said, "Good morning. I'd like some information about your rooms, please." She looked me up and down slowly, her eyes taking in my simple navy blue dress, my lack of jewelry, my regular purse. Then she said, "Our rooms start at $500 per night. Can you afford that?" The words hit me like ice water. Not because I couldn't afford it, I owned the building, but because of how she said it. The contempt in her voice, the assumption that I was too poor to belong there. I thought about all the times my husband and I had been treated that way when we were struggling, when we'd walk into fancy places to dream about our future, and people would look at us like we were dirt. I kept my composure and said, "Yes, actually, I'd like to see information about your suite options." She actually laughed. She laughed right in my face and said, "We don't waste time on window shoppers. If you're not seriously booking, please step aside." That's when I noticed something that made my heart skip. She was wearing a designer watch. I recognized the brand because I'd looked at them myself once. That watch cost at least $8,000. I knew exactly what I paid my receptionists, and there was no way she could afford that watch on her salary. Not legitimately. My suspicions started growing. I said firmly, "I'd like to speak with your manager, please." The receptionist smirked and exchanged a look with her colleague. "Oh, you'll regret that," she said, picking up the phone. A few minutes later, a man walked out from the back office. Manager Andrew. I'd hired him myself 2 years ago. He'd had excellent references, an impressive resume, and he'd interviewed well. I'd trusted him to run my flagship property, the hotel that meant the most to me because my husband had designed it. Andrew walked up to the desk and looked at me the same way the receptionist had, with complete disgust. He was wearing an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, and his shoes alone probably cost $2,000. He crossed his arms and said, "What's the problem here? I took a breath and said calmly, "I'm interested in booking a suite, but I'm having difficulty getting information." He cut me off before I could finish. "Look at yourself," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you belong here? This is a 5-star hotel." Other guests in the lobby were starting to stare. Staff members were gathering nearby, and I could hear some of them snickering. My face burned with humiliation, but underneath the embarrassment, I was noticing everything. Andrew's watch, a Rolex, real, not fake. I knew watches. That was at least $30,000 on his wrist. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I have money. I can pay for a room." Andrew stepped closer to me, invading my space, using his height to intimidate me. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a charity shelter. We have standards here, we have a certain clientele, and frankly, you don't meet our requirements." My hands were shaking, not from fear but from rage. This was my hotel, my husband's dream, and this man was treating me, like garbage for not looking wealthy enough. I said quietly, "Please, I just need—" That's when it happened. Andrew's hand came up fast and struck me across the face. The slap echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side, my cheek exploding in pain, my eyes immediately watering. For a moment, everything went silent. Then I heard his voice again, loud and cruel. "Get out, you filthy beggar! Security, remove this woman from the premises!" I stood there with my hand on my burning cheek, tears streaming down my face. But I wasn't crying from the pain. I was crying from pure rage. This man had just assaulted me in my own hotel, in the building my husband died creating, in the lobby he'd designed with his own hands. I turned and walked out before security could touch me. I went straight to my car, got in, and sat there shaking. My entire body was trembling with anger. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror and saw the red mark blooming across my cheek. Then I made a decision. This ended today. I pulled out my phone and made the first call to my private investigator. "I need everything on Andrew Harrison, manager at my flagship hotel. Everything. Bank accounts, properties, lifestyle connections. I need it in 1 hour." Second call went to my head of security. "Pull all surveillance footage from the flagship hotel for the past 6 months. Focus on manager's office, storage rooms, anywhere staff go that customers don't see. Send it to me immediately." Third call was to my accountant. "I need a complete audit of the flagship hotel. Every transaction, every invoice, every vendor payment. I want to see everything. Drop everything else and do this now." Then I sat in that car and waited. My cheek throbbed. My heart pounded. But my mind was crystal clear. Something was very wrong at my hotel, and I was going to find out what. Exactly 53 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my investigator, and his first words were, "Kennedy, you need to sit down." I was already sitting, but I gripped the steering wheel anyway. "Tell me." What he told me in the next 5 minutes made my blood turn to ice. Andrew had been embezzling money for 18 months. He'd created fake vendor invoices for supplies that were never delivered. He'd added ghost employees to the payroll and collected their salaries. He'd been skimming money from customer payments. The total amount he'd stolen? Over $2 million. But that wasn't the worst part. The investigator said, "Kennedy, he wasn't working alone." I traced the money transfers. Most of the stolen funds went into an account belonging to Gregory Patterson. Gregory Patterson, my brother-in-law. My late husband's older brother. The man who'd stood at my husband's funeral with tears streaming down his face. The man who'd hugged me and promised to always protect me. The man who sat on my board of directors because I'd trusted him completely. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Gregory wouldn't—" "There's more," the investigator interrupted. "I pulled text messages between Andrew and Gregory. Kennedy, they've been planning this for months. They wanted to drain the company's resources, create enough debt to force you into selling. Then Gregory planned to buy the entire chain at a fraction of its value. He sent me screenshots. I read them with shaking hands. Messages between Andrew and Gregory, laughing about me, calling me the emotional widow, saying I was too stupid and grief-stricken to notice anything, making jokes about my husband, One message from Gregory said, "My idiot brother died for this dream, and now his pathetic wife is going to hand it to me on a silver platter." I sat there in that car and screamed. I actually screamed loud and long until my throat hurt. They'd mocked my husband. They'd mocked his death. They'd called his dreams stupid. And they'd been systematically destroying everything he'd built, everything I'd fought for 3 years to preserve. Then I remembered his voice, his last words. "Stay humble, stay kind." I wiped my tears, looked at my reflection, and thought, I'll be kind to those who deserve it, but to the people who spat on my husband's grave, I'll be justice itself. I got out of the car and walked back into that hotel. This time I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I was a storm, and they had no idea what was coming. Andrew saw me walk back in, and his face twisted with rage. "You again? I told you to—" I held up my hand and said calmly, "I have one question for you, Andrew." He crossed his arms, irritated. "Make it quick." I looked him right in the eyes and said, "How long have you been working with Gregory?" The change in his face was instant. Every drop of color drained away. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened but no sound came out. He looked like someone had just punched him in the stomach. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally stammered, but his voice shook. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots, bank transfers with his name on them, text messages between him and Gregory, fake invoices, everything. His legs actually trembled. I watched him reach out to steady himself against the desk. The receptionist looked confused. Other staff members were gathering, whispering. Guests had their phones out, recording. The entire lobby was watching this unfold. My security team walked in through the front entrance. I'd called them before coming back inside. They positioned themselves at all the exits. I turned to face everyone in that lobby and said loudly, clearly, "My name is Kennedy Patterson. I own this hotel." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. Staff members gasped. The receptionist's mouth fell open. Other employees looked at each other in shock. Andrew started backing away. I kept talking, my voice steady and cold. "For 18 months, this man has been stealing from my company. He's stolen money from the business my late husband died building. He's worked with my own family member to systematically destroy everything we created together." Andrew fell to his knees, literally dropped to his knees right there in the lobby. "Please," he gasped. "Please, I can explain. I was desperate. I had debts. Gregory said—" "Gregory," I interrupted, "is about to have a very bad day." I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Kennedy, darling." His voice was warm, smooth, the voice of family. "How are you? What can I do for you?" "Come to the flagship hotel," I said flatly. "Right now." "Is everything all right? You sound upset." "Just come, Gregory. We need to discuss your investment in the company." I could almost hear him smile through the phone. He probably thought I was calling to ask for his help with something. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said. Those 30 minutes felt like hours. Police arrived. I'd called them too. They stood with Andrew, who sat on the floor with his head in his hands, completely broken. Staff members whispered frantically. Some tried to quietly leave, but my security stopped them. Then Gregory walked through the front door. He was smiling, confident, wearing an expensive suit. He saw Andrew on the floor, saw the police, and his expression changed. He tried to turn around, but my security was already behind him. I walked straight up to my brother-in-law, the man who'd held my hand at my husband's funeral, who'd given a eulogy about brotherhood and family and love, who'd promised to help me honor my husband's memory. "You stood at his grave and cried," I said quietly. "You held my hand. You called me family. And all along you were planning this." Gregory's mask fell away. The warmth disappeared from his eyes, replaced by something cold and hateful. "He was a fool," Gregory said, his voice sharp and bitter. "My younger brother, always the favorite, always the one with the grand dreams. Everything should have been mine. I'm the older brother. I was supposed to inherit everything from our father, but he left it all to your precious husband instead." The truth came pouring out. years of jealousy and resentment. Gregory had always envied my husband, hated that he'd been successful, that he'd been happy, that he'd been loved. When my husband died, Gregory saw an opportunity. He'd waited until I was broken and grieving, then he'd positioned himself as my helper, my advisor, someone I could trust. And while I was drowning in grief, he'd been planning to steal everything. "You're pathetic," Gregory spat. "Walking around in your cheap dresses, pretending to be humble, living in that sad little apartment like some kind of martyr. You don't deserve this empire. You didn't build it. He did, and he's dead." The lobby was completely silent. Everyone heard every word. I felt tears on my face again, but this time they weren't from rage. They were from grief, fresh and raw. Because hearing Gregory say those things, hearing him mock the man I loved, it was like losing my husband all over again. But I didn't break. I stood up straight, looked Gregory in the eyes and said, "You're right. He built this. And that's exactly why I'm going to protect it. Officers, he's all yours." Police arrested Gregory right there. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. They put handcuffs on him while he screamed and threatened lawsuits and called me every name he could think of. I watched them take him away, this man who'd been family, and I felt nothing but emptiness. Then I turned to the assembled staff. 40 people stood there, all of them watching me. Some looked scared, some looked guilty, some looked defiant. "Everyone who knew about this and stayed silent," I said clearly, "you're fired. Everyone who treated customers the way I was treated today, you're fired. Everyone who enabled this culture where people are judged by their clothes and their appearance, you're fired. Clean out your lockers and leave." Some people cried, some begged, some admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but were too scared to speak up. I understood fear, but I didn't accept it as an excuse. Not for this. Not in my husband's hotel. I fired 40 people that day. Then I closed the hotel for 2 complete weeks. During those 2 weeks, I did something I should have done 3 years ago. I hired an entirely new staff, but this time I didn't hire based on fancy resumes or hotel experience. I hired people who understood struggle, people who'd been overlooked, judged, dismissed. I hired a former homeless man as my head doorman because he knew what it felt like to be invisible. I hired a single mother as my front desk manager because she knew what it felt like to be desperate. I hired people who had empathy carved into their souls by life itself. I trained them personally, every single one of them. I told them my story. I told them about my husband, about our dreams, about what this hotel was supposed to represent. I told them that luxury isn't about excluding people. It's about making everyone feel like they matter. I cried in front of them. I laughed with them. I built a team based on respect and human dignity. 3 months later, something beautiful happened. The flagship hotel became the highest-rated hotel in the entire city. Customer reviews poured in praising the warmth, the kindness, the genuine care they received from staff. Revenue actually increased, but more than that, I'd see my employees smiling. Actually smiling, happy to come to work, proud of what they were doing. I finally found out who sent that anonymous letter. It was a housekeeper named Maria. She'd worked at the hotel for 6 years. She'd seen Andrew's corruption but had been too afraid to speak up because she was undocumented and thought she'd be deported if she made trouble. She'd sent the letter anonymously because she couldn't stand watching the hotel, which she loved, being destroyed from inside. I called Maria into my office and told her I knew she'd sent the letter. She started crying, apologizing, begging me not to fire her. Instead, I promoted her to operations manager. I helped her start the process of getting legal documentation. I told her she'd saved the company, and she deserved to be rewarded for her courage. Today, 3 years and 1 month after my husband's death, I run 5 successful hotels. Gregory and Andrew are both in prison. I recovered most of the stolen money through legal proceedings. But more importantly, I rebuilt the culture of these hotels from the ground up. Every Tuesday, I still wear navy blue. I walk through each hotel in simple clothes, sitting in lobbies, watching how staff treat customers, making sure we're honoring the vision, making sure no one else gets slapped for looking poor, making sure my husband's dream stays alive the way he wanted it. That slap Andrew gave me? It was the wake-up call I needed. It showed me that success had made me blind. I'd been so focused on growing the business, on proving I could do it alone, that I'd stopped paying attention to the culture inside my own companies. I'd hired the wrong people. I'd trusted the wrong family member. I'd almost lost everything because I was too grief-stricken to see what was happening right in front of me. But I learned something important through all of this. You don't need to be cruel to be strong. You don't need to forget where you came from to move forward. And family isn't always blood. Sometimes, the people who truly care about you are the ones who stand beside you when everyone else walks away. People like Maria, who risked everything to do the right thing. My husband used to say that true luxury is treating everyone like they're worth your time, your attention, your respect. He was right. He was always right. And now, 3 years after I lost him, I'm finally running our company the way he would have wanted. With humility, with kindness, with the understanding that every person who walks through our doors has a story, has struggles, has dignity that deserves to be honored. That slap changed everything. The pain led me to the truth. The betrayal made me stronger. And today I can look at my husband's picture on my office wall and honestly say, I kept my promise. I finished our dream, and I never let them change me. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Share this video with someone who's been betrayed or underestimated. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever discovered a shocking betrayal? How did you handle it? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your story. Remember, stay humble, stay strong, and never let anyone steal your dream. Never judge people by how they look, because you never know who you're really talking to. Treat everyone with respect and dignity, because that's what separates us from the people who only care about appearances. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next video.